All right, welcome to the first Baseball for English Learners. I'm Ted Hand, and I'll be your host. So we had a great game today, April 6th, opening day. The Giants won 5-4 against the Arizona Diamondbacks. There were a few interesting things that I'd like to talk about, and what I'd like to do in this series of videos is to give you a few different concepts from baseball every day. I'll try to use, first of all, I'll try to speak slowly, and I'll try to use a variety of language so that you can practice lots of different things and learn a few things about baseball, maybe practice a few different grammar structures every day. So, some great things happened. Our new guys, Nori Aoki and Casey McGehee, got 2 hits each. Aoki did get into a little bit of trouble on the base paths, which brings up my first baseball concept that I'd like to talk about, the rundown. Or, if you want to use a food metaphor, sometimes we call it a pickle. When you're in a pickle, that means you're in trouble. And what happened was Nori Aoki ran around third base, and he was running towards home, but then the third base coach, Roberto Kelly, who is a new third base coach, he used to be at a different base. When Tim Flannery, who was the old third base coach, left, he got the job over there at third base. So what happened was he put the stop sign on too late for Aoki. And so Aoki rounded the base, and he thought he was going to run home, but the guy had the ball, over at second, was ready to throw him out. And it was too late for him to make it back safely to third, so he started running in this rundown. He was in a pickle, as we say. He was in trouble. And they got him and they tagged him out before he could run home. I believe the third baseman threw the ball to the catcher, and the catcher is the guy who tagged him out, right? So that's what it means to be in a pickle, or to get into a rundown. Another interesting thing that happened, 2 times, Madison Bumgarner, our returning legendary pitcher from that win in Game 7 of the World Series last year. Poor Madison Bumgarner hit a batter with a bean. We call it a bean sometimes. We call it a hit by pitch, or HBP. He hit a batter, and that gives the batter a free walk to first base, right? 2 times. So that was a bummer. However, Madison, sometimes when he has a bad first couple innings, he gets it together. He tightens up, and we saw him pitch 7 strong innings today. Other good news, Angel Pagan, who's having back trouble, had 3 hits, right? And Joe Panik in his opening day debut, his very first opening day. It's ironic that as a rookie he got to play in a World Series before he got to start in an opening day game, but he had a good opening day and he had 3 hits. So the Giants had a lot of hits, right, on Cole Mentor, who was the ace of the Diamondbacks. So it's great to see all of that offense happening. Another thing I'd like to do in this video podcast is to share some memories. Okay, this podcast is in memory of my father, who died last year, but before he passed away, he had a chance to see the Giants win 3 different World Series. So that's pretty awesome that he got to see that. He was a fan all the way back in the days of Seal Stadium, which is where they played baseball before AT&T Park and before Candlestick Park. They were at Seal Stadium. My dad has been a fan all that time. Speaking of memories, we've just lost the great Giants broadcaster, Lon Simmons. And I have a memory of my dad and Lon Simmons. One time, I was talking about our broadcaster, John Miller, who's the bald guy that broadcasts for the Giants. And John Miller is my favorite broadcaster. I was saying to my dad, oh, he's the best broadcaster, right? And Dad just sort of laughed, and he said, Lon Simmons is better, right? And he told me about how Lon Simmons would always tell you exactly what was going on, everything that was happening in the outfield, all the defensive moves, all the small changes that were being made. He was tuned into all of that, and he could describe it all for you. And if you listen to interviews with Lon Simmons before he passed away, he would talk about how he got letters from people about his broadcasting, the way that he described the games on the radio. And they said to him in these letters, you are the only connection that we have to the game through our ears, right? So he took that really seriously. And I think that Lon Simmons set a really great example as a fantastic broadcaster. It's really sad that he couldn't make it for another year, but like my dad, he got to see those 3 World Series wins. So one of the memories of my father that I'd like to share has to do with Madison Bumgarner. Last year, for my birthday on July 13th, my birthday's a few days later, but they were off that day, my dad took me to the last baseball game I ended up seeing with him, and we saw Madison Bumgarner hit a grand slam. And in that same game, Buster Posey hit a grand slam. It was the first time that a pitcher-catcher duo ever both hit a grand slam in the same game. And my dad turned around and gave me a high five during each of those. So that's a great memory I have. I'd also like to talk about a memory that I have of the rundown play. You remember we were talking about Nori Aoki getting into that rundown play between third base and home plate. Now, when I was a child, I used to play the Nintendo game. You know, with the Nintendo video game system, right? I used to play the Nintendo baseball game with my Uncle Willie. And he would always hate it when I played baseball with him and we would get into a rundown because, you know, I was a little kid. I was good at moving the controls on that controller, but he was an older guy and he wasn't very good at playing Nintendo, so I was able to catch him in a rundown, or when I would get my guys into a rundown, I could get out of it, right? Because I was just a little faster at pushing those buttons. So I would deliberately try to get my guys into a rundown making steal plays when you shouldn't be making a steal play, and Uncle Willie would get really angry with me. So that's a great memory that I have of the rundown play. Now, the end of the game started to get a little bit nervous. Sergio Romo gave up a 3-run hit, right? A 3-run double, clearing those bases. And so we had to bring in Affeldt, who got that big strikeout to end the 8th inning. But then in the 9th inning, our closer, Santiago Casilla, came in, and he had to face, for the last out, Paul Goldschmidt. And well, he hung a breaking ball and almost gave up a really big hit, but as it turned out, Goldschmidt missed it, and Casilla ended up getting that close. He got the save with a strikeout. So, go Giants, 5-4 against Arizona. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Please share the video on your Facebook feeds, and you know, click subscribe if you like it. Please leave me a comment if you enjoy it, or if you have any questions or suggestions. Tell me the sorts of things that you'd like to talk about. And I'm going to leave you with a question, okay? So there was a moment when one of the batters got a hit against Madison Bumgarner, and Mike Krukow, the broadcaster who does the color commentary, said, "Ownage is ownage." What do you think he means by that? Ownage is ownage. We'll talk about that next time, tomorrow night when we have Game 2.